There's a secret world just outside the hospital walls where clinicians trade stethoscopes for startups. If you've ever wondered how someone goes from seeing patients to building the future of healthcare, you're in the right place. I'm Kayla, a PA on a mission to figure out what comes next. When I started researching careers in health tech, I found confusing job titles and zero clarity on how clinicians actually made the transition. So I went straight to the source, the people who already did it. Each week, we demystify a specific career path by someone who's already living it, whether it's from the bedside to the boardroom, the startup, or something completely different. Whether you're planning your exit, passively curious, or already working in health tech, this is your insider's guide. Welcome to Corporate Espionage. And today, I am so excited to welcome Hannah Pugh. She's an occupational therapist who decided that she wanted to do more with her degree. After pivoting to health tech, she spent 4 years as the head of clinical experience for a telehealth OT solution and is now a client success manager for an EMR software company. She's done all of this also while building Practitioner Pivot, her business that helps burnt out clinicians find their way out of traditional practice. Our missions are totally aligned, and I know that she is a wealth of knowledge, so today is going to be a really fantastic episode. Thanks for joining, Hannah.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited about this conversation, and I'm excited that you reached out to me to record it, and excited to share more about my experience and all the learnings that I've gathered across the many years.
So let's dive right in. I want to hear about your pre-OT and OT journey. I know that you went to OT school right up the road from me at University of Pitt.
hmm
I'm out here in Pittsburgh representing.
Yes.
So give us some insight into that journey.
Yeah. So I went to undergrad at Michigan State University. I was a kinesiology major. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I kind of fell into OT, kind of, for lack of better words. Like, I knew I wanted to do something within healthcare. I knew I didn't want to go like the med school or like PA route. And so I kind of was like, just learning more about the different roles that were out there. I knew a lot about PT, about physical therapy. And then upon doing that research, I found out about OT. And I really liked OT because it was a lot more holistic. It seemed like a lot more like mental health and like psychology based, which is something that I was really interested in. And so anyways, I did all the shadowing, did all the requirements, and then got into Pitt and went to Pitt for grad school. So I graduated from Pitt back in 2017. So it's been almost 9 years. Holy crap. That's a long time.
Yeah.
But the time went by really quickly.
Did you do any rotations in Pittsburgh?
I did, yes. I did one at UPMC Mercy Hospital.
No way.
Yeah. And
I went
then,
to Duquesne, so we were
oh,
a stone's throw away.
yeah, literally like right there, could see ya.
Uh-huh.
That was one of my other ones. And the other one was at Health South Harmarville, which I did that on the like neuro brain injury unit. And then I did another rotation that was like an outpatient facility. I don't recall exactly where that one was, but yeah. So those were my main fieldwork rotations.
Some of my favorite people that I met at Duquesne when I was there went through their OT program, or were instructors there for their OT program. So
Awesome.
yeah,
Yeah.
OTs are near and dear to my heart. Okay, so you're an OT, you're out in the world. What now?
Yeah. So after OT school, I graduated and I moved to Chicago, which is where I'm at currently. I applied for roles, got a role in Chicago. I worked mostly at the outpatient level. I was treating kind of like wide array of patients of different like types of cases. I was doing that full time, and then I worked a PRN job that was in inpatient and acute rehab. So kind of like in that time frame, I knew kind of early on that I didn't want to do clinical OT for forever. And even like going back, if we go back to my fieldwork days, like we were just kind of mentioning, I knew that I didn't want to be an OT for forever, which was a very scary realization to be like in my last semester of grad school and be like, wait, I'm not sure that I want to do this for forever. I thought maybe it was because, I was still kind of a student, I was still learning, I didn't have the full understanding of the career. And I kind of thought like, okay, when I'm out on my own, I'll be okay. I'll like really like it more. I'll enjoy it more. And I guess it wasn't that I didn't necessarily enjoy it. The thing that, like, was a bit of a red flag, or I guess at that time was maybe like a yellow flag to me, was I saw people, that I worked with or that were my supervisors or my, clinical instructors, and they had been working at the same facility or clinic or hospital for, like, I don't know, 20, 30, even, like, upwards of, like, 40 years. And when I saw that, I kind of freaked out a little bit because I was like, I really admire them. I think they're like super smart. Like they are like some of the coolest OTs, the most like creative, like, I don't know, just really rock stars in what they do. But I couldn't see myself in their position. And then I was like, okay, so now what? Or like, what does that mean for me? So I had that realization, like I said, when I was still in grad school and I was like finishing up my field work rotation. I started working. And at first I didn't really feel those things. And I think it was just because I was so new and like everything was new. There's like still such a learning curve. And I was just kind of like diving deep into all the different diagnoses I was treating, all the different patients I was treating, and like learning about the acute care side and the inpatient rehab side and then the outpatient side. And so I kind of had all of that to like fill my time, I guess, and like fill my knowledge up. And it wasn't until about like maybe 2 years or so into my career that I started having those feelings again of like, "Okay, now what? Like, what is the
Mhm.
next step here? And what is my career gonna look like over the next, like, 5, 10, 15, 30 years from now?" Um, and so, yeah, that's when I hit that point of like, "Okay, now what? Like, what
Yeah.
do we do here?"
I mean, I can definitely relate to that. I always think back to a moment. I remember where I was. I remember who I was with. I was studying late in the library with one of my classmates and my best friends, and I like whipped my head around and I was like, there's no way that this is what I'm doing for the rest of my life. And like, that's it. There's
Mhm,
no way. And I just had this gut feeling like practicing clinically is going to be awesome, but it doesn't feel like it's at all the end of the story.
mhm,
I can't really explain that that never came from a place of discontent. It came more from a place of knowing that I like to expand my horizons and knowing that there is more to be done,
mhm,
so to speak. And like I come from a healthcare family. My mom has been a nurse my whole life. So I've like totally grown up in that world. And much like you said, seen people who have worked the same job 20, 30 years. My mom has been, at the same operating room for my entire life. So I got to benefit because I, have relationships with all these amazing people. But like you said, I didn't see that as something that I felt personally aligned with.
mhm,
So, yeah, can totally, totally resonate. And I think maybe there's a almost like generational sort of shift. I see so many people nowadays entering the workforce not wanting to stay at the same
mhm,
company for even like 10 years.
mhm.
So there's definitely a huge shift. So, with that in mind, you're working in the field clinically and the honeymoon phase has worn off.
Mhm.
And now, where do you find yourself?
Yeah, so at that point, I was, like, really wrestling with a lot of internal emotions, like guilt, shame. I was feeling, like, very kind of outcast maybe of just being like, okay, because I had a lot of friends from grad school and, some of them felt the same way, but I was seeing other people that were, like, in my graduating class who were, like, you know, clearly very much, like, in love with the field and in love with the clinical work, and so for me, it was a lot of, like, yeah, battling those, like, internal thoughts of, like, "Okay, I just went to school for this degree. I just spent a lot of money on this degree, a lot of time on this degree, and what am I going to do now? So I think at first I really had to like internalize those thoughts and like come up with a plan or just like acknowledge that they exist. I think for a while there was like a bit of that wrestling back and forth of like, okay, maybe I'm just not like tough enough. Like maybe I just need to like tough it out and like I need to just like suck it up for lack of better words and just like this is just what being an adult is like and this is what like having a job is like and that's just is what it is. And so yeah, it was probably like a solid 6 months to a year of kind of those thoughts before I was
Uh-huh.
like, okay, came to terms with it that I was like, this feeling's not going away. And that wasn't also another thing that I thought. I thought maybe like, okay, I'll cut back my PRN hours or I'll pick up PRN hours at a different place. I'll, change my work schedule. I changed it from like, I was working 4 10s at my main job. So I changed it from like the day off I had. I had it like originally on Wednesdays and I changed it to Fridays to see like if that helped. I was doing kind of all of those things to see, if there are other things at play that maybe were impacting it. And I think to some degree they were a little bit, but those feelings never went away of like, okay, I still don't want to do this for the rest of my life. Even on the best days of the clinic, I still left and felt like even if that was my day every single day, I still don't think that I would like be fulfilled or I would be content or I'd be happy or I'd be like where I wanted to be. So yeah, I would say that's where I was for a while. Like I said, like 6 months to a year. And then what happened was I started talking to people. Like I think there was a period of time where I was like, okay, I can't talk about it because of those feelings of like shame and guilt and all of those things that I was like didn't want to put out to the world and like admit those. But I finally got over that and I started talking to like my close friends, close family, and we're just like, okay, starting with like the basic questions of like what do you do for work and what does that actually mean? And like, I think that is something that really helped me because I didn't know a lot about like other roles that existed out there. Obviously, like I was in kinesiology, went to OT school. So like that was my track and my like work track. And so I also like came from a family or upbringing that didn't have a lot of like corporate examples to kind of look at. And so I didn't have exposure to a lot of corporate or business type roles. And so yeah, I just started with those questions of like, okay, what is it that you're doing for work? So I was talking to people like my close friends, like I said, family, and just started to like pick their brains of like, okay, what is it that you're doing? Like, who is it that you're working for? Like, you say you like are on emails all day, every day. Like, who are you emailing and like, what are you working on? And that to me, like, was actually really helpful because I think it kind of opened my eyes in like a very like I don't not formal way of just like learning about what other things exist. And then in those conversations, I could like hear things that I liked and I didn't like. And I picked up on things of like, okay, I could do that. Or like, that's actually pretty similar to what I do as an OT and like manage my caseload or, like triage things that are like important and delegate. And so I was starting to see those similarities. And from there, I started to then like just kind of continue to pick on or like seek out those conversations of people who I found interesting or like, can you
Yeah.
connect me to this person? Can I have a conversation with this person?
I think that that is also so valuable. In fact, I had a conversation recently with someone at a job that I was interested in applying to. And that person was gracious enough to have a short phone call conversation with me. And I walked away from that conversation thinking that was so valuable because
mhm,
now I know I do not want that job at all. Like,
exactly. Yeah.
so it is so great to put yourself out there and just have conversations with people.
I ended up getting connected with someone who was in UX design, who was like a friend of a friend. And I was interested in that. I was also like at that time doing my own like research, seeing what else was out there. And so I ended up talking to her and like she was working as a UX consultant at that time. And she offered to let me shadow her on like one of her pro bono projects that she was working on. And so I got to see that and then like ended up doing a part time UX design course very early on in my career pivot story, just to kind of learn more about health tech, learn more about the design thinking process, learn more about, I don't know, like how people outside of healthcare think and how they do things. And I think that for me was a big confidence boost in like seeing that I could connect with people outside of healthcare, like I was really again, only surrounded by, people that worked in healthcare. That was my only real like job experience. And so just kind of being in a room of people who had like different backgrounds and like worked in business or worked in product or worked in marketing or things like that. That was a big confidence boost for me. I do like I do have a caveat that like I know some people when they kind of go on this pivot journey, they're like, "Oh my god, if I could take this certification, I'll land this job." My opinion on it, especially now in hindsight, is like it was really good for my internal confidence to like give me that confidence to like take the next step to start connecting more with people. But at the end of the day, it wasn't like you're going to get hired because you do this certification. So,
Yeah.
um that's kind of where I was at that point.
Yeah. Can you identify any of the things specifically about obviously something drew you to UX UI. So
Mhm.
can you identify anything in that title, let's say, that you thought to yourself, this sounds like something that feels transferable, or this sounds like something that I would want to do?
Yeah, I think a lot of it mimicked the, like, OT, like, rehab framework that, like, product design thinking. It's very, like, an iterative
Right.
product or iterative thinking process where you're, like, assessing a problem, you're designing a solution, and then you're, like, having these, like, cadences of check-ins to, like, see if it's working towards the goal. I related that a lot to treating patients and, working with a patient, identifying their problems or what goals you're gonna be working towards, and then in our treatments, we're constantly like assessing and reassessing those goals to see like, are we actually moving the direction that you are supposed to be moving in? And so I picked up on those parallels pretty early on. And I thought that was like something that I could speak to. And that was something that I could kind of like concrete lay out those parallels. And
Yep.
like, that's kind of what drew me to it initially because I was like, okay, I see the parallels. I know that I know how to do this in an OT sense. So, like, I think I know how to do this, or I think I could learn how to do this in another sense. So, yeah, that was really like the initial thought. I also like really thought, I wanted to do something a little bit more creative. I wanted to do something a little bit outside of like a rigid not that OT isn't creative, OT can be creative, but in the setting that I was working in, it was a bit more rigid. Um,
Right.
and so, yeah, that was like what initially kind of drew me to that. I was working clinically this whole time as I was kind of going through the pivot and like doing these other things kind of in addition to it. So I was doing that pro bono shadow, and then I started like pitching myself to startups and nonprofits, and basically was just like, connecting with them, networking with them, but also just kind of like pitch myself as, I'm an OT, I work clinically. I also like recently took this UX course. I'm learning about like design thinking, product thinking. Would love to connect to chat about like a potential product or problem that you're trying to solve or that you have at your business and like see if I could help anyway. And that actually was pretty successful. I worked with like 2 or 3 nonprofits at that time, and just did, like, short projects for them, but really was another good way for me to, like, build that confidence of, like, "Okay, I can have these conversations, I can, like, prove myself in some capacity," and it was pro bono work, so I was like, "If it's awful, then, like, I'm doing work for them for free, and, like, they'll be
Right.
happy with it." So, it was kind of a win-win because then I could use that on, like, interviews or
Yep.
on my resume and could, like, talk about that real world experience other than, like, only having clinical work to pull from.
Definitely. That feels like a common thread from the conversations that I've had is that the first the first gigs are the hardest to land.
Mhm.
And without non-clinical resume experience, it's very hard to get anyone besides a tiny startup to bet on you.
Mhm. Mhm. Exactly. Yeah, and, like, I think it's really good experience because it's a win-win for them, especially a small
Right.
startup or a, like, nonprofit. Like, they probably don't have money to pay you anyway, but, like, you're doing work for them that's helpful and valuable, and so it's kind of like, why not? I know that it's extra work, and sometimes people are hesitant to, like, want to, invest more time when as clinicians, we don't
Yeah.
have a lot of time, but I think there's ways to do it, and you can time bound it and make sure it's not gonna be, like, insane amount of hours that you can't handle.
Yeah, that's fantastic. There's one way to think about gaining experience in the sense of, like you said, doing a course or, joining some sort of program, and you're trading your time and your money for
Mhm,
quote unquote experience. And in this case, you sort of gathered some preliminary experience and then said, I can do this. Watch me.
mhm,
And rather than trading your money and time, you were just trading, your time.
mhm,
Um, and in a sense, like, what is your time worth? If it is worth the potential job that is then willing to take a bet on you, then by all means, that's a fantastic, fantastic strategy. I actually love that.
mhm. Yeah.
Cool. So you did that for approximately how long?
So this was in, like, 2020. I took the course in, like, May to August of 2020, took a little bit of a break just to reset myself, and then in the end of 2020, like Q4, I started, like, that's when I was pitching and doing those product or that, like, product pro bono work. So yeah, I don't know, about 6 months or so that I was doing it, while I was working clinically. I would say it was
Okay.
probably about that time frame.
And what you're working in startups, you're working for nonprofits,
Mhm,
might have a huge lack of resources. You're coming from a position that you said was pretty rigid, pretty, one could say, probably a little boring. And you're going into this world of potentially um, very disorganized, sort of chaotic, totally fly by the seat of your pants type of work. What was that shift in mentality like? Was there anything that was particularly like exciting or really challenging about it?
I think it was both. Like, I think as a clinician, you are bound by set of rules that you are constantly abiding by, and obviously, like, for good reason. There's a lot of good rules in healthcare, and but I think for me, it was really about, like, taking that, discipline that you have in being a clinician and then bringing that to a more, quote, unquote, like, "chaotic environment,"
Sure.
and I think that was helpful. Like, I think that was a helpful skill to have and to be able to, like, have a problem or a project and, like, limited resources and, like, dedicate that time to solve it and by that end date or whatever. So, I think for me, it wasn't, like, the chaos or the, like, lack of structure or organization didn't really intimidate me. I thought it was, like, it's kind of very par for the course for being in healthcare. Like, there's always
Yeah.
things that are kind of on fire and, like, you're doing things and, like, you're still maintaining your, like, what you have to get done, your checklist for the day or whatever it is. So, yeah, I didn't think it was, like, that dissimilar.
I love that perspective. I think a lot of us might assume that that world is much different, but I think when we, like you said, just kind of look within ourselves and realize like we are literally functioning in a system that is like burning to the ground.
Mhm.
And we're getting it done, and we have so much to do, and we still have to keep, ourselves organized. We're champions of doing that. And what was the straw that broke the camel's back? Like, what finally disrupted enough that you really made the switch full time?
Yeah, so it was actually, like, so I was doing that, like I said, I was, kind of doing that pro bono work while I was, like, networking and still talking to people and, like, trying to just, like, again, learn more about companies, about people, and just, like, was really interested in connecting with clinicians in particular that had gone non-clinical just to hear more advice, resources, like, like what other people had done. And so I was working on building that network kind of like in tandem to doing that work. Got connected to someone who was connected with someone who was looking for an OT that maybe had some like design thinking background or would be interested in like joining the startup. And so that's how I actually got my first role. I was connected with the CEO co-founder of the company. And I started with them as a project, as a like project based work.
Uh-huh.
So I did like a I can't remember exactly how long it was, maybe like 8 weeks or 12 weeks or something like that. And so I took that on while I was still working clinically. And the way they kind of pitched it to me was like, okay, we're a smaller startup. We're taking a bet on you by like, giving you this project work. If you deliver in this project, then like and we kind of get along, we assess you, all those things, then like it could turn into full-time work. So that ended up happening. So then I ended up leaving the clinic once I was offered the full-time position. So that was like I probably started the project work in March of 2021 and then was full-time by end of May in 2021. So yeah.
Okay. That's awesome. So you jump into the role of head of clinical experience?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay.
Um, yeah, so
Obviously, that can be different at every company.
mhm.
So what did that mean for this company?
Yeah. When I first joined the company, we were small. We were kind of in the initial phases of like growing the product. And so, what I did in that role was we were building a virtual solution for OT. It was mostly for upper extremity function. Yeah, it was gamified, meaning like with computer vision, we use games to improve and track range of motion and reps and things like that. And so, my role as having a clinical background was to inform the clinical or the clinical product side. So I was basically saying, like, okay, if we're going to make this a fully functional virtual clinic, which we did, we need to have these certain requirements from a clinical side. On the therapist side, in order to like treat virtually, but then also on the clinical side to like structure structure it like appropriately. Um, and then I also
Can I ask
yeah,
can I ask, was the end user of the product the therapist or the patient?
both. So there's both
Okay.
sides of it. So the therapist was using it to work with the client, like via telehealth. But then also the patient was using it as like a patient engagement platform, exercise platform, home exercise platform. So not all of those things happen simultaneously, and there was different like bits and pieces that kind of happened. But yeah, I was overseeing kind of both arms of that or both sides of that. So
Cool.
really, it was like it evolved a lot and changed a lot, so it's hard to, like, put into one sentence what I did, but I think the easiest way to kind of describe it is just, like, bringing clinical insights to the company, whether that was for informing the therapist side, informing the, patient side, informing the product side, and kind of, like, sitting in the middle of all of those pieces.
Did you mainly work alongside product, or did you also work with engineering or sales or any other teams?
So I was mostly like product engineering, worked mostly on with that side. But also like on business, on strategy, kind of things like
Mhm.
that as well. So really was like a big hybrid role of like a lot of different things. And that's often the case, in like a small startup. You're just kind of like, wearing a lot of hats, you're doing a lot of different
Yeah.
things. And so it was kind of all of those wrapped up in one.
Very cool. So how did that you were there for 4 years, right?
Yep.
How did that role change over time?
Yeah, so at first, we weren't even launched, like we weren't even a live product that like patients could use or could use. At first, it was just like in tandem to outpatient clinics. And so that product looked a lot different than when we launched it to have therapists on our platform and therapists be able to treat patients on their platform. It also looked different when we were going like direct to consumers. It was marketed towards people with like hand pain, joint pain, and they were able to come on the platform and use it as like a home exercising app and engagement
Uh-huh.
app. So we went through a lot of different like versions of the product, a lot of different versions of the workflow and like the clinical workflow. So kind of in each of those phases, my role was different because it was like educating different patient populations or like how to inform the product based on that patient population. So um, yeah, it like evolved and ebbed and flowed in a lot of different ways. But I think I've said this before, but like I always think about, like, 4 years at a startup is like 25 years somewhere else because, things just change so rapidly, and it's just like, uh, that's why sometimes it's hard to explain because there's so many different, like, versions, there's so many different, like, focuses, and, like, things change and you iterate and you, like, wipe things and then you go in a completely different direction. But I loved it. Like, I thought that that was in hindsight, like, that was a really great first non-clinical role for me. It was, like, a really great learning experience. It was, like, really challenging at a lot of times, but, I think I learned a lot and I grew a lot in, like, a lot of different ways there.
Yeah. Did you go completely remote at that time too?
I did, yes. So, it was remote. I traveled sometimes, to New York, which is where we were, like, based. So, yeah, I would go here and there to, New York, but, otherwise was completely remote.
How did you find yourself adjusting from in-person, hands-on patient care to and usually I feel like with jobs in direct care, there's a lot of coworker relationship
Mhm.
fulfillment that happens as well, with your team. So how was that adjustment?
I think it was quite an adjustment, to be honest. Like, I struggled probably for the first, like, year at least of just, like for me, the hardest part was, like, wrapping my head around, like, the flexibility of my schedule. Like, I still felt guilty if I would, like, go on a quick walk and grab a coffee at lunch or something, like because that was so, like that hardly ever happened in the clinic or, like,
Uh-huh.
would leave early to go to a doctor's appointment or something like that, and I remember at first I would, like, tell my coworkers or whatever, be like, "Oh, I have to leave at 3:30 today to go to the doctor's," like, and they were like, "Okay." Like, no one cared, and they're like and that was just, like, those types of things, like, I still it was really ingrained in me to, like, feel I don't know, guilt about, like, taking time off or,
Yeah.
needing an adjustment to my schedule for life. So that was
Uh-huh.
honestly the biggest, like, challenge, and it was, like, that internal guilt that I felt for, like, taking time off for yeah, like, small things or needing to, like, go for a walk midday to, like, clear my mind because I was on meetings all morning or something. So, um yeah, I think that was the adjustment that I struggled with, but, like, in terms of being remote, um, I think some of those things about, like, not having coworkers that were there or having autonomy over my schedule, was a big adjustment too, but I think
Yeah.
over time, I got more and more confident with it and, learned that they trusted me to, like, get my work done. It wasn't a matter of, like, "Okay, you worked 50 hours this week, like, that's good." It was like, "Okay, what did you produce this week?" Or, like, what progress did you make this week?" And being able to speak to those things, and it was like, "Okay, if you can do that and, like, you need to work for 4 hours in the morning and then 4 hours later in the afternoon, and you need, like, 2 hours in the middle of the day to whatever, take care of whatever is then that's fine. And so, yeah, all of those things were like big adjustments for me just because obviously working in a clinic, you are scheduled like 8, 8:30, 9, like back to back to back, and you don't have that flexibility. So yeah, again, a lot of it was like internal guilt and like internal shame that I felt for like wanting or being able to use the autonomy in my schedule. It was just a very big shift.
It sounds crazy to talk about on the other side, of course, but in reality, there is so much of that in healthcare. I think we are very much so expected to be like at your service at any given moment.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, I've personally had patients like get mad at me when they see me eating lunch.
Yeah.
Like I'm a human being, and trust me, you don't want me to be hungry. Like
Yeah,
you
exactly.
do
And it's
not
like,
want me to be hungry.
exactly. And like, I always think about that too. Like, when I worked clinically, it was like, I felt such shame and like so guilty when I had to take time off work. And I would literally be like really sick. And I would wake up in the morning and I'd be really sick and I'd be like, I don't feel good at all. And like, I, know that I like should not go to work. But I was always that like internal like thing of like, okay, how sick am I? Like, am I sick enough to like go to work? And like,
Yep.
should I be going to work this sick? And then it was like such a weird thing to like have to like question and think about because you're like, okay, if I don't go to work today, all of my Tuesday patients aren't going to get seen this week. That means they're going to get seen
Yeah.
later this week. And then I'm going to have double patients when on days when I like shouldn't. So it's like weighing those options of like, how sick am I? Which is like so ironic
Yeah.
working in healthcare because you're like, I don't want to get these people sick, but also like, yeah, but
Most people in healthcare also don't have sick days,
yeah,
like formal sick days.
yeah,
So there's deep, dark irony there.
yes, exactly.
Okay, so you are working at this software company.
Hmm.
You're projecting your life away. Can you talk me through what I know, of course, this is going to change on a weekly, even daily basis, but in that role, what is like an example of a product or, excuse me, a project that you might be responsible for?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, at one point, we were working with employers, and we were contracted through employers to provide our product and service to their employees. And so, in that, one of my roles was to like help with some of the outreach to the employees and coordinate with their marketing team and their efforts. What do we how are we gonna like talk about our product and like get patients in onto our platform? And then one of those things was like leading a webinar for their employees, and it was about ergonomics and like how that can relate to joint pain, and then how like exercise and different treatment methods that we could use to like help. And so that was like one project that I worked on. I think another project that maybe is like pretty different would be on the product side, like when we rolled out a new feature, talking to patients, talking to users, gathering like user feedback, insights through surveys, through user interviews, like, and then taking that information, summarizing that information, and putting it into like tangible steps for engineering and product of like, okay, this is what the feedback is saying, this is what the feedback shows and the data shows, and like from this, what insights can we glean, and like what should we change or optimize or fix in order to improve the solution or improve the outcome for people. So two very different projects, but that those were like both regular types of projects I was working on.
And you obviously expanded your horizon into getting familiar with a lot of new software products, a
Mhm.
lot of new methods of communicating with people, a lot of new like webinars might have been something that you had never done before,
Mhm.
or creating flyers or handouts and essentially creating campaigns
Mhm.
for clinicians as well.
Mhm. Yeah, it was all new, but um just kind of dove in, and just
Yeah.
luckily I had, people that were helpful and, really steering me in the right direction, so that was good.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, that's kind of the best thing. Having a good team is totally make or break. So, what led to the next shift?
Yeah. So in that role, we grew a lot, we shifted a lot. And unfortunately, like after 4 years that I was there, we were mostly getting reimbursed through telehealth reimbursement rates and through insurance. And so, like, at the end of last year, at the end of 2024, they did a lot of cuts through CMS, like telehealth reimbursement rates cuts
Uh-huh.
for OT and PT, or for a lot of disciplines, but OT and PT um, in particular. And so it was a lot harder to get reimbursement, and that was like our main revenue source was through the
Hmm.
direct patient care aspect of it. And yeah, so and it ended up that the company we stopped operations kind of in July of this past year or of this year of 2025. So I kind of knew that was, happening, and that was the shift that was happening. So I kind of like had that of like, okay, now I need to find what my next role is and find where I'm going to end up next. And yeah, so that was like a really exciting shift because I think my first role, like, not that I fell into it because it was a lot of like, hard work and intentional networking that led me there. But I had been there for so long that I hadn't really thought about like, okay, what's next? I really enjoyed my
Hmm.
time there, so I wasn't like ever thinking about leaving while I was there. Um, so yeah, I was kind of like, okay, now what? What do I want to do next, and where do I want to go next? So yeah, I did a lot of like internal thinking, a lot of communication with people, a lot of talking to people, and the one thing that I realized that was in that role, I did wear a lot of hats and I learned a lot and I like did a lot of different things. But what I really did like was the client side. And I liked, coming to clients with solutions to their problems, helping them to their problems. And yeah, that's how I landed on client and customer success roles. And I did some of that in my previous role, but I was like, okay, now in this next phase of my career, I want to focus on that and get deeper into one kind of aspect rather than like being spread thin on like multiple different areas. So, yeah, that was like how I kind of was thinking about my next shift.
And how has it been so far? Do you feel like it is what you expected it to be?
I think I didn't have a ton of expectations, maybe like for
Yeah.
better or worse. I was kind of going into it with an open mind and like obviously I learned a lot about the role through networking, through like research, and then through obviously through the interview process. So I feel like I had like a general understanding, but now I'm like a little over just about 3 months in, and I think it's really been a great shift for me. I think one of the biggest like um perks of it is having more coworkers and like a bigger team to work on. That was something that I was missing in my last role that I didn't really realize how like impactful it would be to have a good team and have like a big team to work from or work with. And so yeah, that's something that I definitely really enjoyed and like have been really liking in my role. And um I like that it's still, like, healthcare adjacent, like, I never
Hmm.
intended to leave healthcare in, like, entirety, like, I obviously went to OT school for a reason, and, like, I still feel very drawn to healthcare as a whole, but, yeah, so it feels nice to, like, still be within health tech and, like, within healthcare and helping to improve healthcare, but also not, like, indirect patient care.
Right. Are you practicing clinically now at all?
Now, I haven't practiced clinically
Okay.
since like 2021 or 2022, I
Hmm.
can't remember. When I first started my last role, I did work clinically a little bit here and there, PRN, and then it just got to be too much. And I was just like, yeah,
Yeah.
no, I can't do both. So, yeah, no, I
Yeah.
haven't in years.
Well, that's freeing.
Yeah,
That's amazing for you.
yes, it is.
So the role, the title, like we talked about, clinician, customer success is a huge buzzword right now.
Yes.
I think I have personally read so many job descriptions that to me it sounds like you take the role of like a provider, essentially,
Mhm.
for your patient who becomes your client,
Mhm.
and you're there to guide them through the process. I would love if you can give us a good understanding of what the role really does.
Yeah, so I think it's gonna look different for every company you're working for, and the product and the software, the solution or whatever, like, that you're working on, because obviously that's gonna dictate the type of, client that you have, and there's different sizes of clients that you can have that would obviously dictate, like, who you're communicating with, who your clients are, the type of conversations you're having with them. But I think in general, you're, like, the main point of relationship for your client. And so your client is whoever is using your software or your product, and you're like that main relationship builder of like, okay, how are they going to onboard or use the product or software? And you're kind of leading them through that process. Then, as they're kind of using the software, you're like, okay, do they have questions? Are they having growing pains that they need you to assist with? And then you're kind of reassessing it in like 3 or 6 months or whatever the cadence is of like, okay, here's what's working well, here's what's not working, and like how can we work together to remedy this or to improve this or to like use this feature to help solve your business problem. And so I think it does parallel like a provider patient relationship, like you had mentioned, Kayla, of like you are like that main person who's there to like answer questions, help guide them, help be a resource for them, and help like them glean insights on their own problems that they're having. So, yeah, it is very like relationship based. It's very like relationship heavy. It's very like client provider relationship based. That's kind of like think about it.
Yeah. And in your first 3 months, how are you settling in?
Good. It's been a really like wild ride in like the best way possible of like it's very overwhelming because when you join a client success company or you are in a client or customer success role, you have to become the expert on their product or their software or their solution. And so, because you cannot help clients or customers on the product or on the software and be the answer or have the resources for them if you don't understand it yourself. And so that was a really big learning curve for me.
Right.
I think it's a learning curve for everyone. And like it would be, you know, if I went to another company that did client success, like because you have to learn each individual product. And um, so I think that at first was a bit overwhelming because I had to really put myself back into that beginner mindset of like, I don't know anything or like I just it's okay to not know anything and it's okay to learn and it's okay to like ask questions again because I was coming from a role where I was the go-to person in a lot of different ways and I had the answers of a lot of different things and people a lot of people came to me for the answers or like how to solve things or how to do things and then when I joined the client success team, I had to then flip and be that person that's like asking a lot of those questions and like be that beginner again. And so honestly, that was a bit uncomfortable for me just because I wasn't used to it. And um, yeah, that was a bit of a challenge. But I think, you know, it's humbling to be a beginner sometimes, and I think we forget about that because, especially, when you're working clinically, you get to a point where, like, you're kind of, like, on cruise control and
Autopilot.
yeah,
Yep.
autopilot, and you don't have to think about everything that you're doing, so, yeah, that was, like I think it's a really good experience. I think it's humbling to be a beginner again and to, like, be the one that's learning new things, and it's exciting to even see, like, where in the past 3 months I've learned and, like or what I've learned and where I've grown, and, yeah, I think all in all, it's been good for me.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
I'm really happy for you. So, much like you were asking your connections and your friends when you were initially on the journey to trying to pivot, what are the functions, right? Besides building relationships, besides helping the client along the path with the product, are you emailing people? Are you calling people? Are you traveling to see people?
Yeah, great question. So in my role, it's all remote. So it's a lot of email, video call, and phone call, mostly video call. And then I don't specifically travel to client sites or customer sites. There are some people that will, but for the bulk and the vast majority, it's like we're a fully remote company, we're a software company, and so we don't do that. So yeah, I think right now, I'm actually just starting to get my first clients, because you do like a solid 3-month onboarding. And so, yeah, now I'm just starting to like get into my own clients and like having them kind of like be under me. And So my day is starting to fill up with more of those video meetings of like introductions, meeting people, talking to teams, see what's happening, what they need help with, like coming up with solutions for them. In other companies, though, I think it is more travel based, depending on the company and their philosophy and who your clients are. Like I remember when I was interviewing for some client success roles, one of the companies I was interviewing with was a software company. However, they implemented into skilled nursing facilities and hospital systems. So that role in particular was a lot of travel between you
Right.
were like going to the specific skilled nursing facilities and doing the implementation on site, or you were going to the hospital system and talking to the admin or the doctors or whoever you were implementing with and like doing a lot of on site. So yeah, I know that like it really depends on the company that you're working with and the product that you're working with and who those clients are and where they're working and like what you need in order to best help them.
Yeah, that's great insight, and it also is a great reminder that no to clinician success, no to customer success, no to any roles are alike, and it's really important to discover that information
Mhm.
of what this will really look like during an interview process or an exploratory discovery call with someone in your network.
Yes, absolutely. Like I think that's true of any job title. Like job titles are
Hmm.
so, you know, I don't want to say ambiguous, but like kind of like, and
Hmm.
you could look at 10 different customer client success roles and they could all be maybe have some overlap of 1 to 2 to 3 key job duties, but, it's gonna look different, again, depending on the product and the company and what you're doing.
Thank you for sharing all that information about your other employed work.
Yes.
I want to pivot the focus a little bit also and really dig in for a second about your entrepreneurial journey as well. If I think back, I believe it was last summer, a PA colleague who I knew through my internet bubble actually mentioned your platform to me in casual conversation because I think I was really starting to have that internal dialogue of,
Mhm.
okay,
Now
what
what? Yeah.
else? Now what? Like I'm really happy and I'm really good at my job and it's starting to become like I'm on autopilot.
Mhm.
Even working in a job where no two patients are the same.
Mhm.
So I remember finding your page. I would be curious if there's any kind of log where I can tell how long I've actually followed you for, but like totally passerby, like in the background for a while now.
Mhm.
So tell me more about Practitioner Pivot.
Mhm. Yes. So I started Practitioner Pivot officially in July of 2024. So you were like an early follower or an
Maybe.
early finder. So,
Yeah.
but it started long before then. I have always been very vocal about like my pivot from clinical to not clinical. I believe it's really important to have these conversations around career growth and building upon your clinical skills and expanding your reach, expanding your skills in different ways. And I think it's really valuable for clinicians to be in non-clinical roles. And so, like even before I pivoted or while I was pivoting, I was having these conversations with other clinicians who were going through it or had done it. And so started networking. Then after I landed my first non-clinical role, I started getting people reaching out to me on LinkedIn, just kind of asking, general questions of like, how did you land your pivot? How, like, want to hear your story, kind of things like that. And so I continue to have those conversations quite frequently with people and was doing it a lot of like informally would meet with people. So I probably did that for like, I guess it was like 3 years of just kind of like casually having conversations, sending people resources, connecting people. And then eventually I got to this point where I was like, okay, if I'm having the same or similar conversations with a lot of different people, I bet that I could find a reach of people, of clinicians who want to hear the same message and would be interested in like learning more about non-clinical roles. And so before I formalized Practitioner Pivot and like started the LLC and all that in July, I started like posting on social media. On Instagram is where I mostly started, of just like um, my experience, a lot about like breaking that shame or that stigma or those like skills or that guilt rather that I had felt. And most of that was because when I was going through it, I didn't find that people were talking about those things. And like I think I still felt a lot of that. Um those negative feelings, and so I just really didn't want people to feel that of like, this is a bad thing, or I'm a bad clinician, or I, did something wrong, or whatever it is, because I went through all of those phases. And so, yeah, that was another like reason for it. So, anyway, started posting on Instagram, started to just kind of like gain some traction, and then started to formalize it a little bit more, started the LLC, and then I started to do one-on-one consults with clients of just clinicians wanting to go non-clinical, helping them like unearth their blockers, trying to figure out like maybe what options would be good for them. The other thing I do is like webinars, which I have done a, a bunch of webinars now, maybe about 10 or 15 or something, just on different topics that I feel like people have questions about. A lot of it is on like networking or interview etiquette or the types of roles that exist out there. Um, and then I have some other like guides and resources of just the things that have helped me and like I have learned along the way, and just like something that I can share with others, that is like relatively low cost for people, because I know there's obviously cost is a barrier, and as clinicians, like money isn't abundant for most of us. So, trying to keep things like relatively low cost and like affordable of ways that like you can learn a lot. And I obviously share a ton of things on my Instagram that is like free resources and my
Yeah.
experience and all of that as well. So, um, yeah, that was like the original kind of concept, and it's grown a lot in the last year. And it's been really nice to connect with a lot of people, and like, um, both in like a formal way and like in client like sessions, but then also in like informal ways of people who just like reach out and message me or ask a question, or it's been a really good outlet to have, and like really good um experience as well.
Yeah. Did you have any idea that your Instagram page would grow to like almost 30,000 followers?
I don't think so. Like, I never started it with being like, I want to get so many followers, or like, I'm going to make a bunch of money
Right.
doing this, or I'm going to like, that's never been the intent. And honestly, like, the
Yeah.
money part is not like, that's not come to fruition either anyway. So it's like, really, I just like wanted to, get the word out and like, help
Yeah.
help someone, and like that was really the goal, and like that still remains the goal of like helping
Yeah.
inspire people, helping to again like mitigate those feelings of like stress or guilt or shame or anything like that. And yeah, I think that resonates a lot with people, and that's what I've heard a lot from people who have reached out of like, you encouraged me to like submit a job application that I never would have submitted, or like you encouraged me to like look at my clinical skills in a new light, or you encouraged me to, see past those feelings of guilt, and like that it's okay that I like want to make this change. And like those like mean so much to me. And I think that's like success in and of itself. Like I could have like 10 followers, and if two of them said that, then I'd be like, I'll still keep posting and sharing. And, like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it's just important information. And also like, I believe in it a lot. Like I experienced it, and a lot of what I share is based on my own experience. And so it's like it or not, but like this is what I experienced, and like no one can take that away from me. So yeah, I think that's also a part of it.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think hearing that's part of my mission with this podcast too, right?
Yeah.
Hearing people's stories is so inspiring and validating for some
Hmm.
people. Even just, I'm sure, listening to your words on feeling shame or feeling grief or feeling guilty about the thought of leaving clinical practice is really validating for people because there's a lot of people in our circles who like don't feel that way, and that's
Mhm.
great.
Mhm.
But for the people who do, it can be really isolating.
Yeah, absolutely.
I also love the resources that you share. You have some great resources on your website, like on your landing page as
Mhm.
well, that just like you said, are very low cost to entry. And so definitely a fantastic resource. Do you feel like your work and work over time in UX UI has informed this as well?
I think in
'Cause I feel like they lend pretty well.
Yeah, I think they do. Like, I think I kind of just had a good understanding of, like, product market fit in a way of, like,
Uh-huh.
okay, who is my audience? And, like, I know my audience very well because I'm also a part of that audience, and so, yeah, I think kind of understanding that has been helpful. I think, as I was building it and growing it, I was never like, "Since I know some things about UX and UI, I'm gonna like, it's gonna be great." Like, I think in hindsight, I'm like, "Oh, yeah, that probably has helped," and, like, helped a
Yeah,
little with, like, design and things like that, but, um yeah, I never, like, started it because I thought that I was, like, had this insight that would be helpful. I was saying the same thing again and again, and so then I thought, like, if I just put this information out there, then it's out there, but, like, I still end up saying the same thing again and again because,
yeah,
like, y that's kind of the thing with social media, like, not everyone sees everything you post, and you get new people
right.
that see your stuff, and so you do kind of say the same things over and over again, in different ways or in the same way even, so,
Yeah,
I'm not sure that it has saved me time, it's definitely added a lot of time, but,
for sure.
well worth it for me.
Yeah. What do you feel like what are some of the most common things that you hear from clinicians looking at your page or consuming your resources or coming to your webinars?
I think a few things. I think, fear, that's, like, probably number 1. Fear of couple different things. Fear of, like, rejection of, like, they're gonna put in this effort, and then are they gonna be able to succeed? Are they gonna get actually land a job? So there's that fear. I think there's fear of, leaving stability, and there's fear of leaving comfort. There's that of, like, you know, my job is safe. I don't hate it. Like, I don't feel like I need to get out tomorrow, but I also have that feeling or that inkling that, like, I'm not gonna be there for forever. So I think leaving that is scary and, like, makes sense that that is a fear that people have. Um,
Yeah.
so I think fear in both of those senses is probably the top thing that I hear from people. And then I think the other thing that I hear from people is just like, I don't know how. I don't know how, I don't know what, and I don't know when. Like, so that of just like those feelings of being overwhelmed by all of those things of like, okay, this feels like very scary. If we go back to fear, and it feels very much like I don't know what to do. I don't know what's out there. I've only been a clinician for 15 years and I only have this experience and stuff like that. So, um, yeah, I think those are probably all the common things I hear. It's like fear and like I also don't know how. But they unearth themselves a little bit different depending on the person.
For sure. What are if there is anyone listening, which I'm sure there will be, who feel some of those ways, what are some of the most simple things you can offer them?
A plan, coming up with a plan of like, okay, you don't need to land a non-clinical role tomorrow, so let's not plan for you to land a non-clinical role tomorrow. Let's plan for like what you're going to do, what you can do tomorrow. What's like a small 15-minute task that you can do and how can you like build on that over time? Um, so I think that, like, thinking of it as I always say, like, it's a marathon, not a sprint. If you plan for it like a
Uh-huh.
sprint, you're gonna fail and fail fast. But, planning for it like a marathon that there's gonna be trials and tribulations and ebbs and flows, and some days are gonna be good, some days are gonna be bad, but like you can get there and you can cross the finish line with a plan. Um, so I think that. I think the other thing I would offer to people who are maybe feeling those things, it's like you never know if you don't try. And I think that's what I say a lot when with the fear thing that comes up. It's like you're never gonna know. And that feeling of fear is never gonna go away if you don't try, and like you're always gonna be sitting there wondering, like, okay, should I have like gotten a non-clinical role? Should I explored this itch a little bit more? Should I have, had another conversation? And so I think no one ever regrets like taking those steps in learning about something. Like just because you are learning about a non-clinical role or you're having a conversation about a non-clinical role doesn't mean that you are like for sure going to do it, and like you absolutely have to. And yeah, so I think just thinking about that.
Those are great ways to think about it. I was thinking also while you were saying that back to when you were really evaluating whether or not you wanted to leave OT, the small changes that you did of picking up, a new position, trying a different environment,
Hmm.
changing your off day, like whatever you could do to make those small changes in your own personal life to exert some control and some not spontaneity, but maybe like novelty is the
Hmm.
word,
Hmm.
into your day to day and continue to go on the path of like self reflection as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, we're pretty close to the end of our time. I want to thank you again. I really appreciate all of the knowledge that you've given us on clinical implementations, on clinical success roles, and of your own entrepreneurial journey. For anyone who doesn't follow Hannah on Instagram, her Instagram handle is at practitioner_pivot. I personally love her content and I consume it all the time. And I think I definitely reached out to you the first time, just cold DM, curious about a conversation as well. So that is definitely a great way to engage and learn from all of her wisdom. If the listeners want to reach out to you, obviously they can find you on Instagram, and I will drop, your page there, your website, as well as any other resources that you want to offer the listeners. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. This is really great. I really enjoy having these conversations, and I think that it's fun for me to reflect on. Well, I don't know if fun's the right word because some of it is a little, it is
Yeah, it's
real, it's
challenging,
raw
it's emotive.
feelings.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it is fun in hindsight to look at that and be like, just because I felt those feelings and was there doesn't mean that's like still where I am. And I think that's also
Yep.
like insight to glean from it. But yeah, I really enjoyed this conversation. I think it's really necessary. Like, I think if you are one of those clinicians that are feeling that way, just like Kayla said this, I said this, like, no, you're not alone, and like, it's okay. And there's things that you can do if you are feeling like that.
Good stuff. Well, thanks for listening to another episode of Corporate Espionage. If you are a clinician who is on their own journey of non clinical work in health tech, innovation, entrepreneurial journey, I want to talk to you so that more of us feel less alone and more of us have that social proof that we are not the N of one. There are quite a few of us out there. Please be sure to like and subscribe and follow Corporate Espionage and give us 5 stars wherever you listen to podcasts. And we will see you again next week. All right. Have a good night, Hannah. Thank you.
Welcome.